Easterman stalker who's been obsessed with me since 15. This begins back when I was 15. I'm 18 now. Just for some background, I work in a 5-star Michelin restaurant as a waitress in a sweet little area. We usually don't get anyone with bad intentions, usually just snobs. Easter Sunday of 2022, one of the busiest days of the year, a man who will be known as the Eastman came in looking for a table for one. He was in a 3-piece suit with a carton of chicken eggs. He was sat in my section, so I go over to get a drink and food order. Once I got his order, he kept me talking, asking about my education, what I was doing in school, what my plans for the future were, what my hobbies were, my name, etc., etc. Just a little too much to be polite, but I let it slide. I was busy, tired, and didn't want any trouble. Eventually, he left for the day, and I thought that was that. I was wrong. For the next couple of months, he would come in 2 to 3 days every week. He got more confident, attempting to flirt with me, asking me to come out with him after work, etc. However, things got worse when one shift I was walking him to his table and he slid his hands down my back and over my butt. I turned around and somehow politely told him not to touch me and do not push my boundaries, as I was only 15 and he knew that. I didn't serve him that day. A week later he came in and I refused to serve him once again. My manager took over his table, yet when everyone was on break and it was only me on the floor, he came inside. He knew by that point it was table service only and came up behind me, bringing his hands down my arms. I was shaken up, but politely again told him not to touch me. I didn't hear from him again then until next Easter, which would be in 2023. Last Easter, things got worse. He showed up again, the usual shenanigans, yet my managers were prepped this year, not allowing me to go within the vicinity of him, keeping me safe. This was only useful inside of work. I walk through the town centre to get to work. It's about a 25-minute walk from the train station. As I was walking to work one day, he saw me in his car and followed me into work. I immediately told my managers, who yet again told me to stay away from him. A week after that, I was having coffee before work, about a 15-minute walk away from my job. And what do you know? Guess who sees me and follows me on foot to work? I again tell my managers, who keep me away from him again. Yet that day was different. He asked my managers for me, saying he knew I was there because he'd seen me. Last year, in 2024, I took a lot of holidays around Easter time and was off for a lot of exams. Supposedly, he came in a few times, asked for me, and didn't come in much when I wasn't anywhere to be seen. He hasn't come in since then. However, this Sunday is Easter Sunday. So, for Easter 2025, Easterman, let's not meet. Kid banged on my door, crying for help at 3 a.m. So this happened last night, around 3 a.m. Me and my brother were woken up by loud banging and crying at our front door. We live in a rough neighborhood, so naturally my brother grabs his shotgun, cocks it loudly, and starts yelling, "It's 3 a.m, go away," through the door. We were both tired as hell and freaked out. We'd recently had a girl from the neighborhood break into my car, so we assumed it might be her. I looked through the front door window, we've got one-way film on it, and didn't see anyone else around. I crouched near the door and listened. It sounded like a young kid, completely hysterical, begging us to help her call her mom. I told her I was calling 911 and that help was on the way. My brother, in full adrenaline mode, opens the door, still holding a shotgun, and starts yelling at her to calm down. I didn't agree with his approach, but in all fairness, she woke up about half the block from her screaming while she was pressed up against our door. After he opened the door, I got to see her. Honestly, I was kind of hoping it was a homeless person from our area, or even someone looking to do some weird shit to us. But it was a kid, and the look in her eyes while she was kneeling at our doorstep made my heart drop. I was thinking she was around 14, but she said someone crashed into her car down the street, and she left her phone in the wreck so she couldn't call her mom. things weren't really adding up as I asked her a few more questions. She kept begging me to go down the street with her, but I told her no way, we're waiting for the cops. About 10 minutes later, 3 tow trucks drive by, heading toward where we told 911 the crash happened, so I felt safe enough to walk with her down the street. On the way, she keeps asking to hold my hand, and I'm just thinking, you look like a teenager, you're barely dressed, and I'm a grown man walking through the neighborhood that you woke up. Not a good look. I awkwardly asked how old she was. She said 18 and grabbed my hand anyway. I felt very uncomfortable, but her emotions were definitely outweighing mine at the time. Halfway there, the cops show up. I flag them down, explain the situation. Meanwhile, she's telling the officers over and over, I have really bad ADHD and anxiety, while handing me her eyelashes, a full set of false lashes. I really didn't want to touch them, but I took them just to help her feel a little safer or whatever. One of the cops pulls her aside, and the other starts casually asking me a few questions. He told me they got another call, about 30 minutes before, that a teenager was running across someone's lawn barefoot, which I looked over and realized she was barefoot the whole time. Then I saw them cuff her. I think they suspected she was on something, which I was also thinking. As we're wrapping up, the officer sees me still holding the eyelashes and goes, "What are you going to do with those, bro?" I just told him, "I'll sleep on it. I just want to go back to bed." I head home and started talking to one of the neighbors about it. He assumed that it was her parents' house or something, so he didn't want to get involved in domestic drama. Makes sense, and I just assumed that's why no one else got involved. I couldn't really go back to sleep because I was shaken up and pretty worried about her. I imagine it was a traumatic experience for her. I don't know if that was a justified reaction for her situation, or if she really was on drugs or mentally ill, but I will definitely be praying for her and her family. My uncle set me up with the guy who ended up stalking me. So this happened 3 years ago. I was 24 and living alone in a one-room apartment in the city where I'd graduated. I rented this apartment because my uncle lived in the same building and helped me find a place with decent rent. My uncle was well known and liked in the building. There were over 90 apartments and he seems to get along with everyone. Barely 7 months after I moved in, I woke up to a friend request on Facebook from a guy I didn't know. However, I noticed that he was friends with my uncle, so I figured he must be a neighbor or someone from the building. I saw that he was close to my age and thought, why not? So I accepted it. I didn't think much of it afterward, but then he started messaging me, saying that he was my neighbor and that he knew my uncle and whatnot. I was polite and responded within a reasonable amount of time, even though I wasn't particularly really interested in having a conversation. I thought it would be rude to ignore a neighbor, especially since my uncle was so known in the building. At this point, I already suspected that my uncle was trying to set me up with this guy. I was single and the neighbor was close to my age. My uncle was the type that always asked, "Do you have a boyfriend or are you still single?" As if it was any of his goddamn business. My uncle knew everyone in the building, and this guy was the only one that sent me a friend request and seemed eager to talk to me. I had a strong feeling that my uncle was behind it. Anyway, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't interested, but I remained polite as long as he didn't cross any boundaries. After all, we were neighbors, and I wanted to maintain that as civil as possible. What annoyed me more, though, was when one day my uncle came over and asked me to help him with something on his Facebook account. He wasn't tech savvy, and yeah, we lived in the same building. I often helped him with these things. I logged into his Facebook, and immediately a chat window popped up. The message was from that guy. It was the only message in the chat, as if the rest had been deleted. It seemed a text that was part of an already ongoing conversation, though I don't remember the exact text. The message's main idea was that he needed my uncle's help, followed by a laughing emoji. At this point, I was pretty annoyed, because I was sure my uncle had said something to him about me. I started replying to his messages less frequently, as I wasn't interested in any kind of romantic fling anyway. I was just being polite. I never led him on. Eventually, the text became less frequent, and I assumed he had given up. I moved on and forgot about it. Then, one day after finishing work, I worked remotely, I decided to go get some groceries. The moment I opened my door, a pack of chocolates fell to the ground. They were somehow placed on my doorknob. I was confused. Why was there chocolate at my doorstep? At the time, I didn't immediately suspect him. There was no note left. I simply picked up the chocolates and placed them somewhere in my room. A few days later, another gift. A small potted flower. This time, however, it was really creepy because there was a note glued to the pot. It read, "I saw you and I like you," with a smile face emoji at the end. Now, imagine this. A young woman in her 20s, living alone, receiving anonymous gifts with notes that say, "I saw you." That's hella scary for me. I don't know who this person is, and they casually mention that on a note glued to a pot. At this point, I became paranoid and started thinking about who it could be. Lo and behold, my neighbor texted me. It suddenly all made sense. It had to be him. This had already crossed every boundary. However, I was scared to confront him directly because I didn't know how he would react. This guy was massive. I'm pretty tall myself at 5'9", but he's about 6'1" and way more muscular than me. And he had a big dog. Plus, he knew exactly where I lived. So I decided not to address it right away. Instead, I waited to see if he would somehow give himself away in his messages. A week passed. I was still paranoid. I bought pepper spray. I started listening closely to footsteps near my door, trying to figure out if he was coming by again, but nothing happened. I wasn't sure if it had stopped, but I started to feel slightly better. Then one day I went to check my mailbox. Inside, I found a bunch of small notes and poems. Some of them read, "I hope you liked the chocolates. I would love to know if you liked it. You are charming." The poems were strange. Each one was 4 lines long and had a romantic tone. I couldn't tell if they were his, but they all expressed different ideas regarding love. The weirdest part, each note was dated. For example, one was labeled 11/01/2021, and I had one for every day of the month. That meant the person had been leaving them consistently. I also realized that the same day I got the chocolates, I had received a note about it. Only, I didn't check my mailbox on that day. At this point, I had had enough. I confronted the guy over text. He completely denied everything. He said that he liked me and my style and just wanted to get to know me. He acted offended, asking why I would accuse him of something like that. No matter what proof I provided, he denied it all. At one point, I even started to gaslight myself, thinking, what if it really wasn't him? What if I was being mean for no reason? I felt guilty. But then, after I called him out, everything stopped. The gifts, the notes, the poems, nothing. And the guy never texted me again. I don't have definitive proof that it was him, but come on, the timing was way too much of a coincidence. The moment I confronted him, all of it stopped. I think it's pretty obvious. 3 years later, I still live in the same building. He usually just says hi when we pass by and that's it. I feel safe now, and I haven't been bothered again. Oh, and my uncle moved out. So yeah, happy ending, I guess. Possibly was almost taken into organ trafficking. This was about 5 years ago, when I was 11. I remember I was on my way home from school. It was a little late because my train had gotten delayed about 2 times, but honestly, it didn't bother me. It was Friday and I had nothing to do. As I got home, I received a text from my angry mother. I had no clue why she was mad, but she was texting me some crazy nonsense and somehow put the blame on me and proceeded to end the text with, "I'm not cooking, I left $70 on your desk, go buy something to eat and drink." So that's exactly what I did. By the time I got home, I changed my clothes, went outside and walked to a gas station, which was only about 0.39 miles away from me. I've always walked to this gas station, either by myself, with my older brother, or with another guardian. So honestly, I thought it'd be no big deal to go by myself, because I was always so hyper-vigilant about my surroundings, since I was diagnosed with PTSD at a very young age. It made me extremely hyper-aware. As I got to the store, I saw this man inside the walk-in fridge, where there was just a shit ton of beer. And as I was walking around the store to get some snacks, I noticed him staring at me a couple of times. It felt like I needed to be more aware, but I brushed it off, just thinking he was just making sure I wasn't doing anything dumb. But I was wrong. As I was paying off for the stuff at the counter after being there for 30 minutes, the same man is standing next to me. It was at this point where I got scared. This man stood tall. He looked a bit muscular, and his eyes were visibly dark. I know some people read hot romance, but when a man's eyes go dark, it's not sexy. It's terrifying. As my stuff was getting put in the bag and the pizza was done, I picked up my pizza and left. But then the man decides to have a conversation with me. He greets me with a hello. I greet him with a very clear, scared, shaky hi. He started asking me questions like, "How old are you?" I replied back with my age, stating I'm only 11. I try walking some other way around, but he keeps stopping me in my tracks, and I was just thinking of all the terrible possibilities if I screamed, ran, or let alone hit him with my bare hands to have him leave me alone. As I stated my age, I noticed his eyes widen even more, and he proceeded to look me up and down, where he asked, "Are you by any chance healthy?" And he asked me an odd question, telling me, "What alcohol do you like?" I stayed quiet and told him I don't drink unless it's a special occasion, and he started asking me more alarming questions like, "Did you know you can live without a kidney?" At this point, I had to play dumb for a bit. I replied with, "No, that's nice actually." It got to the point where he started asking me if he could give me a ride home, and I declined his offer more than 20 times. Until he gave up. He left me alone, all agitated, and I speed walked home. It wasn't until the following year I saw him again at the mall. I almost pissed myself, and I refused to go to that mall, because I don't ever want to bump into him ever again. So, to the creepy guy who tried abducting me, let's never meet again, please. A guy randomly appeared in the forest during my walk, carrying duct tape and watching me. I think I avoided something really bad. So there's a small forest near my house, probably about 200 meters by 200 meters, almost a square. There's like a country road on the side that farmers use, and they are small roads into the forest, so it's divided into 4 parts. It's not remote, but not super busy either. There's a main road next to it, but hardly any cars pass. One part of the forest, the back left section, has always creeped me out, ever since I was a kid. The rest of it feels fine, but that one area, something always felt wrong. Anyway, last year in 2024, I was walking along that part of the forest. I was a teenager and walking alone. The place is safe to take walks and all that. I live in Slovenia. The path curves a bit, so you can't see too far ahead. I turn a corner and suddenly there's a man right in front of me, about 6 meters away. I didn't hear him coming at all. No footsteps, no rustling, nothing. It was like he appeared out of nowhere. He was an adult man, definitely not in his 20s or 30s. He was older. I immediately felt like, oh my gosh, an adult and a weird guy. I'm a girl and I need to watch out. I didn't turn my back to him. I just kept walking, super aware of where he was. I looked back and he was staring at me. I told myself if he starts walking towards me, I'm sprinting straight into the field next to us. Eventually, I turned forward again and didn't see him anymore. I assumed he just walked away, but something felt off. So I looked again and he was in the forest itself, not on the path. He was walking through the woods, in a section people don't usually walk in, especially not during spring or summer when it's full of underbrush. He was walking in the direction I'd come from, and he was holding a roll of duct tape. the thick grey kind that every dad has for some reason. I stared at him. I didn't want to lose sight of him. It felt extremely wrong and creepy. Who the hell brings duct tape into the forest and hides in the trees, and walks into the direction back into the forest towards a teenage girl? Then, a little while later, he shows up again, this time riding a small electric scooter that he literally had in the same bushes. Like he came back with duct tape and looked at me. I was looking at him, and then he went back and came back with a goddamn scooter. I was heading back by then, and I knew there was no way I was letting him be behind me. I pretended to tie my shoelaces until he went far enough. He rode off in the opposite direction, but kept stopping and looking back at me as he went. There are fields around, so it was very visible where he was after he drove off. I was beyond creeped out. The whole thing felt like a horror movie setup. A teenage girl alone, creepy man in the woods, hiding in the trees with duct tape. I can't stop thinking about how bad that could have turned out if I hadn't have been alert. I didn't report it at the time. I don't remember if I even had my phone, and I was so focused on staying safe that calling the police didn't register. At first I was like, okay, maybe he's on a walk, but duct tape, walking in bushes and trees, that's crazy. For some stupid reason, I didn't tell my parents. I don't even remember what I was thinking. I just know that I didn't feel any fear, anxiety, or panic, just that I was very aware. Also, for some reason, I was thinking, okay, I'm overreacting or overthinking stuff. But I was thinking more about it today, and I literally felt so much anxiety about it and fear, because God knows what could have happened. I'm also very thankful that I didn't have headphones on, which is something I usually have on, but this time I didn't for some reason. And I don't know if that was my guardian angel or something, but I am extremely thankful. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to hit subscribe. Please let me know in the comments down below if you enjoy this kind of format and this kind of video. I hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you next week.